Hello, this is Pastor Mark with an update regarding worship at Mount Moriah and Salem Lutheran churches. This information is correct as of December 8, 2020. Our closure continues. By unanimous decision, the Mount Moriah Council has decided that it will remain closed this Sunday, December 13th. We said that this date was the earliest that our worship might resume, but upon looking at conditions, again, the council decided unanimously that we're going to stay closed for at least one more week and look at conditions next week. We're hoping to see the numbers improve a little bit more before we decide it's safe to resume in-person worship. Salem had already decided at its November council meeting that it will remain closed until the Tier 3 mitigations are lifted by the state. We obviously don't know when that is going to be. So there will be no worship at either church this Sunday. There may be worship at Mount Moriah next Sunday, December 20th, and there may be worship at Salem if the Tier 3 mitigations are lifted, but we just can't predict that at this time. So with knowing that our worship this Sunday is called off, I know a lot of people are now thinking about Christmas, and to be honest, so are we. So let's talk about Christmas Eve a little bit. No full decision has been made yet about what to do about Christmas Eve. The councils both have scheduled meetings next week, and we'll make a decision then. And there are a lot of factors for us to consider in deciding what we do or don't want to do on Christmas Eve. Let's talk just a little bit about the realities of what Christmas worship might look like this year. Christmas Eve is, of course, our best attended service of the year. We usually have between 70 and 90 people at Salem and 100 to 130 at Mount Moriah. As you might imagine, it's impossible for us to safely distance that many people in either sanctuary. Now, helping us in that count is that a lot of people have already decided they're not going to attend Christmas Eve worship this year. I know I've spoken to many of you who said you're not coming back to church at all until you've been vaccinated. And there are several as well who might judge that it's just a little too risky to try to risk in-person Christmas Eve worship this year. And again, we don't know when state mitigations are going to be lifted. We don't know if we're even going to be able to safely have that many people on Christmas Eve. We need at least 3 to 5 days advance notice to really prepare well for in-person worship, particularly on Christmas Eve. And we don't know just how much lead time we're going to have, whether we're on or off those mitigations. The governor has said that he doesn't see those mitigations being lifted until it's about 4 weeks out from Thanksgiving, which would be next Thursday, December 17th. And that's the earliest. As of now, of course, our region wouldn't qualify to get off those mitigations anyway, so we need additional time no matter what. But at this point, no one can say what it's going to look like on that Christmas week coming up soon. Here are our concerns that both councils have expressed about in-person worship on Christmas Eve and how we do it. Even if we get off the Tier 3 mitigations, we'd still be under Phase 4 of Restore Illinois, which limits in-person gatherings to 50 people. Now, we all know that those aren't being enforced all that much. It's more of a voluntary compliance, but we've also said that we would comply with this to the best of our ability. So, do we count heads at the door and turn away the 51st person, no matter who it is? Or do we just decide that we aren't going to ask people to distance, even though the best guidance we have says that we should all try to stay about 6 feet apart? Do we try to solve that first problem by requiring reservations in advance for people who want to come to the service, which is something we've never been particularly keen on doing, and all the more so since we might not even know until Christmas week if we can even have a service? And then there's a big one that maybe we don't necessarily think about. A lot of extended families are together at Christmas time, and many of these families come to worship on Christmas Eve together. I love to see that. I think it's wonderful. I think it's amazing. But under these circumstances, how many people at the service are going to be from out of town or out of state? How many are going to be from places where the virus is spreading more readily than it is here in Union County? How many are from places where people aren't as vigilant about wearing their masks and maintaining social distancing as we have been here? And what are the implications for spread? The average person in our pews on Sunday morning doesn't have a whole lot of contact with people during the week who are from outside Union County. And then all of a sudden, what if we have a service where a third to half the people are from elsewhere? What are the implications for spread? When you bring in that many people from that many different places, it's far, far more likely that at least one of them will have been exposed to the virus in the preceding 2 weeks and may not be showing any symptoms, may not even know they have it. That's something we truly have to think about. It doesn't make the decision for us, but it's something that we have to weigh in the balance. Like I want to stress, we have not made a decision yet about in-person worship on Christmas Eve. When we talk about in-person worship on Christmas Eve, let's talk a little bit about the realities, because it's not going to be anything like what we're used to on Christmas Eve. Our usual Christmas Eve service lasts about an hour and a half or so. It has several readings. There's all kinds of singing and music and special music. And this year, the service would last no more than about 30 minutes if we did it in person. And the only song would be Silent Night. We would still include the Christmas story, a sermon, and communion. Masks and distancing will be required. And unfortunately, we'd have to say no socializing with the people you haven't seen in a long time before or after the service. No family pictures in the sanctuary beforehand or afterwards. It's going to be like a typical Sunday morning. We open the doors 10 minutes in advance. You come in, we do the service, and when we're done, it's time to go home. You want to talk to people outside, that's fine. But inside the church itself, we would really need to clear it out as soon as possible for everyone's safety. And those are the realities of what a Christmas Eve in-person worship service is going to look like this year. And as you can tell, it's very different. It's better than nothing, but it may not be our only alternative. What we know we will do this year is we are going to have an online service that includes all the usual Christmas readings, all the songs we customarily sing, and probably some special music as well. This service might be live streamed if we decide we're not going to do in-person worship. It might be pre-recorded if we decide that we will or that we might have in-person worship. It definitely will involve people from both congregations, and the service will be made available late in the afternoon on Christmas Eve, probably by 4 o'clock or so. Planning for this service is already underway. This is a sure thing. This is going to happen. There will be an online service, probably an hour to an hour and a half long, that includes all the usual Christmas stuff. And unfortunately, this year, that's the only way you're going to get all of it, is through this online service. What we might do is a shortened in-person Christmas Eve service, if and only if the councils judge that to be wise. That decision may not come until after this Sunday, because we want to see what the numbers are doing and what they might continue to do. And in fact, it could be even later than this Sunday before we know. So just to recap, there's no in-person worship at either church this Sunday, December 13th. Drive-up communion will continue at Salem from 11 to noon on Sunday for as long as this present worship shutdown continues, and 11:30 to noon once we go back to in-person worship. But definitely this Sunday, drive-up communion at Salem, 11 to noon. A full online Christmas Eve service will happen, and we'll give you more details about that later. Small, short, in-person Christmas Eve services might happen. We'll tell you more about that later. And a formal decision on whether those the in-person Christmas Eve services happen will be made no later than Tuesday, December 22nd. That's kind of what we might call a drop-dead date. We need to know by then if we can do it or not, and if we will do it or not, so that we can be prepared for it. So stay tuned and know that we're going to have a full Christmas Eve service this year. It just might have to be online only. We don't know yet, but we'll keep you posted. Thank you. Have a good day.